My name's Angelo, and welcome to We Want Picks. This is the only channel dedicated to UFC fight picks and DraftKings lineups run by professional fighters and MMA insiders. As always, I am joined by Nick Newell, professional fighter, professional model, and ESPN top 10 guest, as well as Dan Kramer, Ultimate Fighter alumni, UFC veteran, Bellator veteran, and Jacob Lyons, a skitty kid from Indiana. Today, we're talking about the Overeem versus Volkov fight night fight card. We're going to run through the entire card, give you our fight picks, give you our DraftKings lineups, and set you up for success. This fight card has already been plagued by injuries and COVID drops, so this lineup is ever changing. We're going to walk through the fight card as it looks today. Today is Wednesday. There's going to be changes. There's going to be drops. It's going to shift even more. You always lose somebody after weigh-ins. So stay tuned. We'll update. We'll post an updated video. We'll give you our updated lineups. So we'll keep you informed. But as of today, this is the fight card, and we're going to walk through it. First up on UFC Fight Night, Overeem versus Volkov, we have Ode Osborne versus Jerome Rivera. This is an interesting fight. I expect this to be a fun fight with some solid back and forth. These guys are on two completely different trajectories in their careers, but both are a ton of fun. Dan, what direction are you going in this fight? Are you going to put somebody in your DraftKings lineup? Who do you think is going to win?
I'm not sure yet. I want to see what amount they put against Jerome. But yeah, so I taped both these guys. So originally Ode was supposed to fight Dennis Bondar, and he was the underdog. And it looks like he's $7,800 as an underdog. And now he's the favorite. So just off of the value alone, I'm going to be looking at him to add him in as a value pick, fighting a short notice replacement in Jerome Rivera. But what I saw on tape with him is, he's on Dana White Contender Series. Looks like he trains in Wisconsin, so I'm not sure if where he's training at. But in his fights that I saw, really, really fast, explosive striker. He's got a long reach, 73 inches for a 135-pounder. Pretty crazy. Decent wrestling. He wrestled in college. Threw up some arm bars from the bottom in some of his fights. He was actually the favorite against Brian Kelleher. I think he got submitted in that fight. But either way, he looks really good. Very comfortable, smooth striking. Doesn't cut a lot of weight. So I think I'm going to go with him based on the value, but Jerome Rivera is also tough. He's on a 2-fight losing streak. Another long striker, good kicks, apparently a pretty good grappler. So I think under normal circumstance it would be a pretty close fight, but I'm going to go with the favorite probably for $7,800 against a short notice replacement.
Yes,
that's where I'm at right now.
That's a good point. And anybody watching that does DraftKings, what works out really well in most cases is once DraftKings establishes a price for a fighter, that is the price for that fighter no matter what. They don't adjust the rate. So in this case, Ode is $7,800 because he was the underdog with his original opponent. That opponent dropped. There's now a last-minute replacement. I agree with you. I think Ode's going to win this fight. But Ode is now the betting favorite. He should win this fight, and we'll get everybody else to take in a second. But he is priced at $7,800 as an underdog because DraftKings is not going to change his price. So these type value snags are always fantastic if there's a last-minute COVID change or an opponent drop, and you can get now a heavy favorite at what was an underdog price. So Nick, are you familiar with Jerome Rivera, who is a last-minute replacement? Do you think it affects anything here? How do you think this fight goes?
I mean, Jerome Rivera is fresh. He just fought and he just lost, which doesn't always mean much. I mean, he lost to the brother of the champion. Obviously, the brother of the champion is not the champion, but tough fights. Tyson Nam, got finished, and he's coming up from 125. He usually fights at 125, and he's moving up to 135 for the first time that I know of in the UFC, at least. And he's fighting Ode Osborne, who's a good striker and can wrestle, but seems a little lost in the jiu-jitsu department from what I've seen in the past. Not to say that he's bad, but I would say that is his weakest point. Again, when you fight Brian Kelleher, it's kind of difficult because he can guillotine anyone out of nowhere. So he's got such a killer guillotine, and Kelleher's ground game is really good. So it's a hard way to gauge. I feel like there's not enough information out on either one of these fighters for me to draft one into my lineup. I will say in terms of who they have beaten, I would say that Francisco's or Jerome, sorry. I think Jerome's resume is better. He's beating the people with the better records, but I think that Odie is a better fighter from what I've seen. And I would pick him to win, but I'm going to stay away from this in my DraftKings.
Cool. No, that makes sense. And I agree with Jerome Rivera. Yes, he's coming off a loss. They're actually both coming off losses, but it was a bad loss in that he lost start to finish, but he didn't take a ton of damage. He's in shape. He doesn't have to cut any weight because he's moving up a weight class. I actually think that'll help him out a bit. I think he'll be fresher. And I think he'll do well. I just don't think he's going to beat Ode. Ode had a full training camp. He's ready to go. He's a very good striker. He's very athletic. He's very fluid, and he adapts well. And by fluid, I mean he changes stances. He'll adjust to whatever you're doing. So he has a very solid fight IQ in the striking department where he can read what you're doing. He can read your stance, and he'll mirror it, or he'll go opposite. If you're, if you're standing southpaw, he'll go orthodox, or vice versa. So he's very, he adapts well, and I think he's going to win this fight. I thought he was going to lose his original matchup because he is takedownable. And I thought he was going to get taken down in control, but I don't see that happening here. I think he wins this fight, and I think he'll score some decent points striking. So he's definitely somebody to grab for your DraftKings lineup. And Jacob, do you have him in your lineup? Do you think he's going to win? What do you think about that last-minute opponent switch?
Yeah, so the first thing I did, obviously, is I go for a tape on Ode. And the first thing I thought was, how did this guy lose 3 times? So I started looking up his losses. He lost to Brian with that guillotine. But if you look at the tape, it wasn't a tough, it was like he's trying to get back to his feet and he got caught. So you like the fact that he's getting back to his feet. Then you look at 3 years ago, he caught in a knee bar 24 seconds in the first round, which I didn't even think that was possible. That's got to be like an unbelievable time there. And then he lost the decision. Because this guy, to me, looks like Kevin Holland when he fights. He's very confident. He's very smooth. He's very, in and out. He's very long. The other guy seems very, very raw to me. He's good on the ground, but a lot of those ground wins were before he's met like good competition. And like Nick said, he fought Figgy's brother, and Figgy's brother just kind of manhandled him on the ground. So I think once he came to this different level, I think he's just still a little raw. Back-to-back losses, hasn't won since the Contender Series win. So I have Ode. Luckily, he was in at $7,800 because he would probably be $8,500 against this level of competition if they set the lineup now. So I have Ode in my lineup at $7,800, and I don't think it's very close.
Yeah, no, I agree, and we touched on it before. I think he's a value. So all 4 of us going with Ode here. We'll see everybody's DraftKings lineup in a bit, but definitely some value there. And like I said, anytime there's an opponent drop or an opponent change, check on those fighters because they may go from underdog to favorite very quickly, and you might get some real value out of that. Our second fight of the night on the Overeem versus Volkov fight night is Molly McCann versus Lara Procopio. This is another interesting fight. This entire fight card is loaded with close fights or what look like mismatches on paper, but are actually pretty close with some live underdogs. Personally, I'm actually pretty excited for this fight. I enjoy the female striking first fights, and that's what these are. These are both strikers first. That's their game plan. That's what they want to do. With that being said, I personally think Molly McCann is the more well-rounded fighter. I think she can grapple. She will grapple. She has been grappling even though her base is a solid striking, boxing heavy base. I think she's going to use her grappling in this fight. Jacob, how do you think this goes? Do you think they're going to stay striking? Do you think, McCann's going to use her grappling to sort of negate the Lara striking, or what do you think happens here?
Yeah, so you mentioned it's probably going to be a striking battle, but you're mentioning McCann's grappling. I must have just missed out on the tape because I see her as just kind of a power puncher in that division. Great knockout power. I didn't see any of her grappling, and I saw Lara looked very comfortable going to the ground. She is a Brazilian and has a submission win. And I think her only loss is a split decision loss. So she's basically, not technically an undefeated fighter. And her split decision loss is to Carol Rosa, who we'll talk about later, who looks fantastic, I think. So she's basically an undefeated fighter and looks very comfortable on the ground. Can she get McCann to the ground? It sounds like that might not be the best idea because it sounds like McCann is a grappler as well. So for me, this is just a coin flip. I have no idea. I think McCann ended up making it in my lineup. And I think the only reason for that was I watched an interview of Molly McCann, and she sounds just like Darren Till. It is unreal how much, if you close your eyes, it's Darren Till doing a female voice. So that's why I have her in my lineup. But I think it's a coin flip either way.
Yeah, and
expert analysis right there. She sounds like Darren Till, so I'm putting her in my lineup.
It's like when your wife picks a football team based on the jersey color. To clarify, McCann is not a grappler that's not her trade, but in all these years of training and really evolving in MMA, she's developed some solid wrestling takedowns, and she's been using them in her fights recently. So she's growing.
So that actually would make me feel more comfortable in my pick. Because going into this, I saw it as a better striker in Molly versus Lara, but Laura's very comfortable striking. And then I thought Lara had the ground game. I thought I saw her get a couple takedowns. So if McCann can avoid the takedowns on this, then I think she definitely has the power to finish that fight then.
Yeah, personally, I think it's the opposite, meaning I think McCann's the one who will utilize, if the striking doesn't go her way, she will utilize grappling to sort of neutralize that threat. Nick, what are your thoughts on this? How do you see this going?
I think that this is a tough fight also because I there's not enough out on Lara. Only that one fight really in the UFC. Molly has a lot more tape and a lot more footage out there to judge from, but she can strike and she can grapple. I think she's going to win, but I don't think she's that dominant in either one of those for this fight to score high points. I think it's going to be more selective with the striking. Maybe they throw at each other, but they're going to end up in the clinch a lot. And I feel like this fight is going to be fought in the clinch, and it's not going to score a lot of points. McCann's going to win, in my opinion, but I'm not picking her. I'm picking her to win, but I'm not drafting her to my lineup.
Gotcha. No, that makes sense. So three of us are going McCann. One because of her voice for some reason. Another just because you have more confidence in her career and the research you're able to do. Dan, are you going to ride this wave or are you going the other way?
I'm going the other way. I mean, not by much, but I watched tape on Procopio, and I thought she looked good in her last fight against Carol Rosa. I think it was a split decision loss that really could have went either way. I thought she had, a good jab, solid leg kicks. They sat in a phone booth for 3 rounds and punched the hell out of each other. So she's got the cardio to go the distance. She even shot a couple takedowns, but didn't look like wrestling was her strong point. It says she's a black belt, former national jiu-jitsu champion, so you'd have to imagine she's got some skills on the ground. And that last fight, again, I think she would have won that fight, but she got dropped in the third. Like, it was a back and forth fight, but I think she was pulling away and then she got dropped, and I think that's what lost it for her. So, like Jacob said, she theoretically could be 7-0 if it weren't for that one punch.
As an underdog.
Right, as an underdog, right. So, and also part of my take on this is the value there, right? So I think it's going to be a close fight, but her being the less expensive fighter, if I had to choose one of the two, I would take Procopio at the 7,700. McCann, First of all, her nickname is Meatball, so that's pretty cool. But unlike Jacob, I'm not going to pick her because of her cool nickname. And kind of the same things you guys said. Supposedly she's a boxer, but to be honest, I think Procopio looks like the more technical striker. McCann seemed to really throw a lot of power shots, not many jabs, didn't really set her punches up, but she's definitely aggressive. She threw in some wrestling here and there, when she needed to, and definitely very physical. So I think it's going to be a tough, close fight. They're both very game. But I'm leaning towards Procopio, both from a value standpoint, and honestly, I think she can win the fight.
Yeah, and one last thing to add for Procopio, and we're probably messing that name up, is she was undefeated going into her UFC debut, lost that fight. There's been quite a layoff since then, and she's now debuting at flyweight, which is down an entire weight class. So she lost and is sort of one of those fighters that went back to the drawing board. What can I change? I lost. And in this case, we'll see what changed in her sort of technique and how she approaches the fight. But certainly she lost some weight and she went down a weight class. So I don't know if that's a factor or not. I'm not touching this fight. I think it's definitely closer than the odds are saying. I think Molly McCann wins, but this is not a fight that I'm going to put real human money on or DraftKings money on. I'm going to leave this be and just enjoy the show. Our next fight on the Overeem Volkov card is Karol Rosa versus Jocelyn Edwards. This is another close fight, and you can't go by the odds. This is another fight that's much closer than the odds tell you it's going to be. A lot of these fights, for some reason on this card, are great. They're close matchups, and the odds makers are just they're just wrong. I don't know if you guys agree with me on that, but this is definitely sort of a style of clashes. Edwards did just fight 3 weeks ago, so it's a very quick turnaround for her. She has a ton of power, a ton of volume, but Rosa uses her wrestling when she needs to, and I think she can outstrike Edwards, and I think she can take her down and do what she needs to do. But this is a much closer fight than these odds specifically will tell you that it is. Dan, are you jumping at one of these? Do you also, am I crazy, or do you think this is closer than the odds have it?
No, yeah, I saw it the same way. I mean, I feel like there's so many live underdogs on this card that I can't figure out which one I want to pick. Like, I was looking at my lineup the other day, I'm like, I got $2,000 left to spend, because there's so many underdogs that I think can and actually will win. That being said, this is going to be a close fight, definitely close in the odds, I think. Jocelyn Edwards, so this is her second short notice fight in a row. She just fought on January 16th. She took that short notice, went 3 rounds and beat a really tough Yanin Wu. She trains at King's MMA, so she's got a good camp. Looks to be a very good striker, aggressive, athletic. I think she's going to be really, really good coming into this fight, especially having fought 3 weeks ago. Hopefully she's stayed in shape and all of that. So I think, I watched some of her old tapes where she fought in Mexico. She looked like an absolute beast. Power shots, kicks, knees. So the short notice thing, it throws me off a little bit, but I think she's going to be very, very good. But she has a tough opponent in Karol Rosa. So we just talked about Karol Rosa, very good striker, powerful kicks, likes to stand trade. I think it's going to be a close fight. I think it's going to be a slugfest. I think there's a lot of value in her at $7,500. So I'm definitely considering putting her in my lineup. I can't make my mind up between all these value picks. So between her, Procopio, there's a couple others we'll get to. I think I just got to pick the right one.
Yeah, hats off to the UFC matchmakers. These are good fights, much better than the odds makers will tell you. So, Nick, as your manager, I should 100% know this, but have you taken a 3-week short notice fight? I can't remember if you have. And if you have, how much of a factor is that? I know some people are in camp all the time and can just turn right into a fight, no problem, and others need to mentally prepare.
I was in camp, and and I got offered like a 2 weeks notice or something, like 3 weeks notice to go fight in Russia. And they gave me the guy, and I was like, hell yeah, I'll do it. I don't care. I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna go to Russia and I'm gonna fight. And then they told me that I fly in and get there the day of weigh-ins, and then I have to like leave the night of the fight. And I'm like, no fucking way. Oh, sorry, I shouldn't swear like that. But it's like it was like definitely
It's a hit job right there.
Yeah, you're gonna lose. We're gonna make everything as uncomfortable as possible so you lose. But like the fight was someone that I thought I could beat. I'm like, I could beat this guy. I'll go to Russia. Like that would be cool. You know, I'll go and win, and I'll be like Rocky versus Drago. But just
coach middle seat the whole way there.
Yeah, and you know what? It just seems suspect that I would get there the day of weigh-ins. Like, you want me to fly all the way across the world? Like, no, you're gonna put me up a week early at least if I'm going all the way across the world. So I said no. And then I was down to take a couple short notice fights, but people don't want to take short notice fights with me. Sorry.
So do you think it's a factor here? So Jocelyn seems to be making a career out of it, 2 in a row. And I you know, in my opinion, I'm not an actual fighter, but I've been around it long enough. I feel like if that's your mentality and everybody's different, and if you're in a perpetual training camp, a short notice fight in some cases favors the fighter, because some fighters get in their own heads. They go crazy. The camp just eats away at them mentally, and they start to lose their minds. So a short notice fight doesn't give you that time to obsess and go nuts. Do you think that's a factor here? Are you staying away from Jocelyn because of the short notice fight? Is it not a factor at all? What do you think happens here?
I think she's in shape. She just showed up short notice and was in great shape before. So I don't think it's really going to be a factor, her fatigue or anything like that. The one thing that worries me about her, oh man, why do I have hiccups? Who gets hiccups as an adult?
Children do.
Yeah, it's a child thing. So anyway, the thing that worries me about Jocelyn Edwards is how comfortable she is off of her back. So she's extremely comfortable off her back. She throws up submissions. She's great at jiu-jitsu. It's actually very beautiful to watch. But versus a quality opponent like Carol Rosa, who is probably the better wrestler, most likely, in my opinion, the better wrestler, I don't think she's going to be able to get that submission. And I think Rosa's going to put her down and be fighting off submissions and land her shots and win the decision. And in the striking, Rosa might be a little more fluid and solid, but Edwards just comes forward with those bombs and she's a fighter to the end. But I think when you come forward recklessly like that and you fight someone that is a better wrestler, they put you on your back. When you get put on your back and you don't try to get back up and you just go for submissions all the time, if you don't get it, you're going to lose. So if people feel the other way, I think it's a good value pick, but I'm staying away from it because I feel like she's just going to be
I think that all makes sense. And you brought up a very good point with the whole she's comfortable off her back, because that can be a problem. And we've seen that before.
That is a problem these days.
Yeah, and we've seen that before with other fighters that are comfortable striking, comfortable grappling, and not the in-between, not the transitions. And they just accept those takedowns. And Dan, I'll never forget, it was like me, you, Ryan, who's another fighter, and Laborio in a hotel room one day. And he was going on and on about it, how he's not even teaching off his back anymore. And it's all stand up and get out, stand up and get out, scramble and get out. The odds of you throwing up a triangle are much slimmer than you working your way back to the feet and controlling that fight. So that's a really good point, Nick. You're saying she's very comfortable on her back, which can be a problem. Jacob, I don't know if your very keen eye picked up on that, but what are your thoughts on this fight? And is the short notice a factor? And what do you think happens?
I also have a short notice story, just as wild as Nick's. My freshman year of high school, golf, my coach came out to me at practice one day and said, "Hey, guess what? Tomorrow you're starting varsity." So I didn't have 3 weeks. I didn't have 2 weeks. I had 22 hours to prepare for this golf match. And I shot a 66 for 9 holes. So I think Rosa is really going to – I think this is one of those fights where Rosa can get a lot of takedowns? Because you guys didn't see the scrambling of Edwards. The tape I watched was she can scramble. Not only is she good on her back, but she can scramble. So I think this is one of those weird fights where Rosa can score a lot of points with takedowns. A takedown, scramble up to the feet. Takedown, scramble up to the feet. With that being said, 8,700 for that. I don't know, because I see the same thing you guys see. Edwards is tough. Her hands are very precise. I see a lot of precision in her. So I think Rosa wins, and I think she could score points with the takedowns get up. But this is, I mean, like you guys were saying, this is tough. This is tough. So I have Rosa winning, but neither one of these are in my lineup. You can get good value with 7,500 with Edwards.
Yeah, so that's a good point. The takedown get up is a good point. When we're talking DraftKings, obviously points are a factor here, and we have another fight in the card that we're gonna talk about with do the new rules help them? But the takedown let up, takedowns are worth 5 points. That is a lot of points for one action. And to your point, Jacob, you're saying she scrambles well. You're saying Rosa is gonna take down Edwards. Edwards scrambles really well, so she'll get back up. And then Rosa will just take her down again, which is now a 10-point, 2 takedowns.
Right. Because I think when you see Edwards comfortable on her back, it's against people she knows she can be comfortable on her back with. I think she knows that Rosa could be on the next level. And instead of just pulling guard, I think it's going to be more of a emergency situation to get back to her feet.
Yeah. So I valid input. I completely disagree with you, but that is solid, and we'll see. I think she has powerful hands. She's got a lot of power for her frame. She has great hands. They're powerful. I think Rosa is the more well-rounded fighter. And I think if she feels some of that power, or if she doesn't feel like she's getting timed well, she's just going to go ahead and take Edwards down, and Edwards will just stay on her back. And that's how that fight's going to go. So we'll see. We'll see if you're right with the takedown let up, because in that case, $8,700 is worth it. So my pick is Rosa for the win, not touching it for DraftKings. Next up on the Overeem Volkov fight card is Mike Rodriguez versus Danilo Marquez. We've been talking, if you're watching these in order, we have been talking about close fight, close fight, close fight. The odds are wrong. This fight's much closer than the odds say. The Rodriguez versus Marquez fight that we're talking about now, that is not the case. Mike Rodriguez is a heavy favorite, and rightfully so. Neither one of these guys are very good, and I hate to say that, but neither one of these guys are going to make it to the top 15 or anything like that in the UFC. But I just don't see a world where Danilo Marquez wins this fight. Am I crazy? Do you guys are you following that logic as well? Dan, do you think Marquez can pull this off, or do you finally agree with the odds makers here?
No, I mean, I disagree with the odds makers only in the sense that I think Mike Rodriguez should probably be even more of a favorite. I mean, I personally put some money on this fight. I think I got around those odds, -220, because I watched tape on both of them. And yeah, unless Marquez gets some sort of lucky submission, I just don't see a way how he can win this fight. Striking wise, Rodriguez has a huge edge. It didn't look like Marquez had much power in his hands. The wrestling looked so. I think he's, I don't know how many, I think he's lost a couple fights in a row, but I mean, just to give you one interesting example of the level of competition he's fought, 2 fights ago or 3 fights ago, the guy he fought was 0-21. I didn't even know that was legal. So anyways, not to go too much on him, I think Rodriguez is going to win this fight. I think he should win by finish. I'm definitely putting him in my DraftKings for the $9,000, 100% in there. And Rodriguez honestly has looked pretty good lately. I mean, in all reality, the loss to Ed Herman, that was a win. I mean, he finished Ed Herman, and Ed Herman played his cards right, and the ref thought he saw a cup shot that never happen, and he turned around and got the win. But yeah, I'm taking Rodriguez in this. As long as he can defend the takedowns, which he should be able to do pretty easily, I think he's going to finish him, and he should pour it on this guy.
Let me jump in here. That 0-21 guy has 19 of his 21 losses are in under a minute. That's incredible. Go ahead. That's
if you do that, how much he makes per hour, he's probably making a lot of money.
His nickname's Bad Boy.
$50 for every minute he loses in the first minute of every fight.
But geez, if you go in to lose and you're making like a G a fight, right? Just to lose, and you fight 12 times a year, that's $12,000 extra for your family.
Right.
It goes a long way for some people.
Damage. So I agree. I think we're all going to agree, but we'll go through. The only concern I do have is Mike Rodriguez is pretty takedownable. His takedown defense is not great. I've been throwing it out there. His takedown defense is not great, and he's been taken down quite a bit. So that is possible. I mean, at the end of the day, Danilo Marquez is a professional fighter. He's had 11 professional fights. He's not stupid. And somebody in his camp may be saying, hey, let's wrestle. Let's wrestle in this fight and let's get this win. So, Nick, you think there's any adjustments happening here? Or do you think, it's going to be striking and it's just not going to go well?
I don't think he's going to take down Mike Rodriguez. He had that adrenaline dump after he thought he finished Ed Herman and ended up losing that fight, but that was really a win. I've seen the way Mike knocks people out, and he's got a lot of power, and I just don't feel like Marquez has the wrestling to really get him down. If you're a good wrestler, Mike's going to have trouble, but this guy's not a good wrestler. And in terms of elite, like he's obviously really good, but not enough to get Mike down. And I feel like he's going to get knocked out. And the only thing that worries me is sometimes once Mike hits the ground, he is not as good as he is at standing and wrestling and stuff like that. So he has been caught and submitted in the past, and I've seen it at local shows because he's a local guy and a friend of mine. So I like him personally. And I do think he's going to win. And it's a toss-up whether I'm going to pick him or Michael Johnson in my lineup, which we'll get to later. And I'm kind of like a little on the fence about it. So right now I'll say yes, definitely draft him. Say yes, draft him. But I got to see how the card falls together, whether I decide to go with it or not.
Yeah, that's, I think we're all singing the same tune here. So Jacob, you have, is
your lock of the week, Marquez? You're going to go for 3 locks of the week in a row?
Of the week.
Oh, wow. Finally, you're picking a lock of the week that you can actually win.
But probably Rodriguez. This is not my lock of the week. My lock of the week will always be underdogs. But I'm definitely going with Rodriguez on this one. And Nick, can you confirm that Sherdog is correct that his nickname is Slow?
Yeah, it is Slow. It's Slow Mike. It used to be Bones. He used to, because they said he reminded like John Jones, because he used to fight at 85 and he was like real skinny. And he moved up to 205 and put on some muscle, and they just call him Slow Mike. That's
incredible. That's one of the best nicknames I've ever heard. But I'm the same thing that you guys said. I have in my notes here actually, and I only had time to watch a little bit of tape, but I saw Rodriguez. He was fighting someone, and the commentary was, can that other person get him to the ground? And I saw a shot, and it looked like good takedown defense to me. Maybe the guy wasn't an incredible wrestler, but it looked like good enough to me. So in my notes here, I simply have, can Danilo take Rodriguez down? No. Therefore, Mike is going to win the fight. I mean, that's how simple it seems to me.
It is that simple. So that's it is that simple. So next up on the Overeem Volkov fight card, we have what would have been a main event on a fight night like 8-9 years ago. We have Michael Johnson versus Clay Guida. One's an absolute legend. One, Clay Guida is an actual legend. He has been around forever. His hair has been bouncing around for 15 years. He has had some of the most exciting fights in the history of the sport, let alone the UFC. And Michael Johnson is one of those guys where he was kind of just young and okay. And then he hit a streak, and all of a sudden he was fantastic. And things were going really well for him at the Black Zillions and that gym. And then he lost to Khabib badly. And things just sort of took a turn there. He has if you look at his actual record and you look at each one of those fights, he has some awesome wins in there over what are now some amazing fighters. I just don't think things are going well for Michael Johnson. I don't know what's happened. I don't know if he's just physically much older than he actually is because of wear and tear. I don't know if he's just over it. I don't know if the Black Zillions disbanding mess with him. I don't know what it is. Personally, I just think in this fight, we have a tale of two tapes. We have an aging superstar in Clay Guida. Superstars might be a little bit of an exaggeration, but he's getting older, which is why he's slowing down a bit and he's not as crisp as he was. Where Michael Johnson should be pretty close to prime, and he's not. So I don't know why his skills are falling off a bit here, but you guys see it that way, Dan? Do you feel the way I feel? I mean, coming from American Top Team, you saw the whole Black Zillion thing happen, and I know Michael Johnson wasn't a defector of American Top Team, if you will, but do you think that the camp destruction is what's going on here? Or do you disagree that Michael Johnson is in his prime and he's not declining at all?
No, I mean, I have no idea with the whole camp thing, to be honest. From what I've seen, I know you said both these guys are legends, or one of them is. I would say, honestly, Michael Johnson might be like a quiet legend in a sense. I mean, he has literally fought everybody. Like, you look at his list of fights: Khabib, Diaz, wins over Poirier and Ferguson. I mean, he's fought literally every top contender through multiple generations, and he's beaten some of them and he's lost to some of them. What I will say is, the thing that stands out the most to me, which is crazy, is he's lost 8 of his last 11 fights, and he's only 34. So he really should be getting better. He's not at an age where he's really going to be rapidly declining. But in his fights, man, I watch his fights, he looks good. I feel like, I don't know I don't like to use the word curse or anything like that, because I don't believe in that sort of stuff, but he's winning fights, and then all of a sudden something crazy happens and he finds a way to lose, or something unfortunate happens. But as far as his skills go, he should win this fight. He's got good boxing, really fast hands, good footwork. He's really looked good in most of his losses up until he lost. So he's a guy that I think will win and should win. It's just hard to bet on him, just with the way things have gone. I mean, I'm just looking at some of my notes here. Thiago Moises is piecing him up first round, comes out round 2, gets heel hooked. Stevie Ray, same thing, looked really good. Third round, all of a sudden got taken down, just seemed deflated. It almost got finished and lost that fight. So skill-wise, I think he's the clear pick here. But just the intangibles of winning fights, I don't know. I'm probably not going to touch this one. As far as Clay Guida goes, guy's almost 40 years old. He's still got great cardio. I watched his last fight, and I mean, he was still throwing bombs and shooting takedowns relentlessly. So, he's not a guy you can sleep on. You think 40 years old and you're like, oh, he's going to fade. He's still got, especially in a 3-round fight, he's got 3-round pace that'll put most people in trouble. So, Johnson should win this, but I'm not touching it. Too many questions. So we'll see.
Yeah. And I agree with most of that, where Michael Johnson is the better fighter. It's almost as if, as his career has gone on, his fight IQ recently seems to be just gapping for some reason, because to your point, he's winning fights and then he's losing these fights because of, in some cases, poor decisions in the fight. So I don't know what's going on there. There's, something's going on. His striking is great. His footwork is great. His wrestling is pretty good. His grappling is really good. I don't know why he's not putting it together. I think he's on a 4-fight skid right now. Maybe it's a 2-3 fight, but I think he's on a 4-fight skid. Nick, you mentioned you're probably taking him, or you're considering taking him. Is that, what are your thoughts on that? And are you just going the opposite direction of me here?
Yeah, I mean, it's tough. It's going to be a game day decision. I'm going to have to look over my lineup and see what fights they add, and I might take him, I might not. It's between him and Mike, and really the thing is, you look at his record, and I'm basically just mirroring a lot of what Dan said. but he has wins over the GOAT Artem Lobov. But he also knocked out Dustin Poirier, which probably wouldn't happen again, but did happen. He beat Edson Barbosa by outstriking him. You have people that are good wrestler. To me, Gleison Tebow beat Khabib, and Gleison Tebow is one of the best wrestlers to ever fight. He takes down everyone. He has like one of the highest takedown percentages, and he knocked out Tebow. He knocked out Danny Castillo, who's a wrestler. He beat Tony Ferguson. Shane Roller, NCAA champion, beat him, and then he does things like loses fights, gets out wrestled by Miles Jury, who's not really a wrestler, but a great fighter. And his fight with Diaz, he got beat up. The fight with Dariush was pretty close, but many people thought he won back then. The Gagey fight, he faded, but he had his moments. Elkins, he was killing him. Khabib, he got smashed. Emmett, he was winning the whole fight until he got knocked out. And it's like, he's just inconsistent. The same with Moises. He was winning the whole time. And I think he's just a really good fighter. And, I think he's the better fighter, and he has the skills to finish Guida. I think if Guida takes him down, he doesn't have the skills necessarily to finish Michael Johnson. And you have to have that good jiu-jitsu to really finish Johnson. And Guida's more of a wrestler, grinder type guy. I see Johnson getting back to his feet and possibly getting the knockout. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think I agree with everybody. I'm just disagreeing with how I think the fight's going to go, but I'll get to mine in a second. Jacob, what direction you going? Who are you siding with here, me or those fools?
If you take Michael Johnson, who has lost 6 of his last 8, for $8,800, you are insane. That is unreal. $8,800 for someone that's lost 6 of 8. These odds should be a coin flip fight. And this is my lock of the week. Clay Guida is going to win this fight. And if he doesn't win this fight,
I'm definitely going to win. I'm definitely driving.
I know.
The decision's been made. Now you got to take Johnson. I might have to take Johnson now.
Not only do I like Guida to win this fight, I like him to get close to 10 takedowns in this fight. He's just gonna maul this guy. I think this is a battle of, at this point in both their careers, I think this is a battle of toughness. And no disrespect to Michael Johnson, because he is tough. I mean, we saw him even against Khabib. He was not going to give up against Khabib. But I just think Guida outworks him in this fight. I think he gets the takedowns, and if he doesn't keep him down, like Nick was saying, then he takes him down again. And he takes him down again. I think he's going to score a lot of points at $7,400 for a wrestler against someone that's lost 6 of their last 8 fights. If you don't have Clay Guida in your lineup, I don't know what you're doing. So I'm taking Guida, lock of the week. He's in my lineup. He's going to win the fight. Very easy.
Yeah, here's my concern. My concern is I agree with you. And that's very concerning because your lock of the weeks have not gone well. So I agree in that, I think Clay Guida, he's one of the most active fighters to ever do it. I don't have any stats in front of me, but if you've ever seen a Clay Guida fight, he never stops. He's throwing strikes. He's shooting takedowns. He literally never stops. And I think he can outwork Michael Johnson. I think he can just keep moving forward, keep working on him, keep shooting, keep moving forward, and he's just not going to stop. And I think he's going to grind out a win. So, as an underdog, I think he's going to do it. I certainly think he's worth the money because even if he loses, I don't see him losing without some high volume output. So we'll see how this goes. We're split. Dan, you went with Johnson or Guida?
I'm not touching it for DraftKings. I said I think Johnson should win, but just with the spottiness of his recent fights, who knows? But athletically and skill-wise, I think, and age-wise, I think he should win. But I wouldn't be surprised if Guida won. It just depends what Michael Johnson shows up.
And that's the key. That's a really good point. That's the key. Michael Johnson could be contending for a title tomorrow. If you look at his just skill set and what he's done in some of those fights, but just lately he hasn't been showing up for whatever reason. So we'll see what happens in this fight. If this was the WWE, this would be a win or go home type fight. They're both on skids. One's older. Michael Johnson's, I think it's 4. He's lost 4 in a row. And the UFC after 3 isn't very forgiving. So we'll see how this goes. I really hope best case scenario as a fan is Michael Johnson comes out there, looks amazing, runs through Clay Guida, and he's back to what he was. Personally, I'm picking Guida. So we're split 2-2 here. But this, either way, this will be next up on Overeem versus Volkov fight night. We have Diego Ferreira versus Beneil Dariush. This is a rematch. Dariush won the first fight. This is a rematch. The odds have shifted. I'm assuming the odds have shifted the way they have for the loser of the first fight, Diego Ferreira, to win is because he beat Anthony Pettis, who former champion. He's had some peaks and valleys as well, but a phenomenal fighter and has been for a very long time. I'm assuming that's what shifted the odds here because these guys have fought before. He has lost before, and now he's favored to win the fight. And if you look at Dariush, he's done some good things since that win. It's not as if he won the fight and did nothing. Recently, he beat Scott Holtzman, who, Nick, when you were in the XFC, before you moved over to World Series of Fighting, you were on a collision course with Scott Holtzman. We know he's a phenomenal wrestler, ton of power. He's one of those guys that can give anybody a hard time, and Beneil Dariush beat him. Do you think Beneil wins their rematch again, or do you think, it flips this?
I do. I mean,
you do what?
Obviously things change in time, and I feel like the person that lost the last fight usually has a little bit of advantage because they have a lot less to lose. They lost last time, and the other person's like, oh, well, I beat him last time, I have to do better than I did. And literally anything you do is better than last time if you get a win. So I feel like there's always an advantage for being the person that lost the first fight. But I do think that Dariush's looks really solid his last couple fights in his striking. And his last fight, he took Diego Ferreira down easily many times and controlled him fairly easy. And it was like he cruised to a victory. He basically had back control the whole fight. So that's like one thing that makes me a little nervous about this is that he had back control, and I don't know how many points he would really score, but I'm definitely favoring him to win. He's a live underdog. I mean, if there's anything lock of the week underdog for me, I would say Beneil Dariush is going to win this fight. His striking has looked great. He has knockout power, and Ferreira is actually a very good striker too, but he's a little more loopy and a little more wild and kind of uses it to get his takedown. But when he got significantly out-wrestled the last fight, I just don't think he has what it takes to beat Dariush.
Yeah, I agree here. I think, certainly Ferreira's had some nice wins since that loss. But, as we know, wrestling is probably the hardest skill to learn later, meaning you were out-wrestled easily. I don't care if it's been 2-3 years. It's going to be very hard to close that wrestling gap. Wrestling is the type of thing that you just have to do it all day, every day to get better at it. So I just don't know if he's gotten to the point where he can either neutralize Beneil's wrestling or, push his own. Dan, what do you think happens here? Do you think the rematch goes the same way, or do you think it flips?
This is a tough one. To be honest, I have no idea who's going to win this. If I'm going to have to make a pick. Well, hold on. Let me break down both guys first. So, I watched some tape on both of them. Ferreira looks to be a very good striker, but he throws a lot of heavy shots, like Nick was saying, a little more loopy, but he's all forward pressure. He's great in the clinch, takedowns, gets to the back. He's just pressure, throws punches. I mean, he fought the Taisumanov guy a couple fights ago, and he was just relentless, the pace he put on. He was walking him down for 3 rounds, so he's got 3-round cardio. But with that being said, Beneil Dariush is also really good. He's got powerful punches. He can finish, on the ground or on the feet. He's on a 6-fight. I mean, both these guys are on 5- and 6-fight win streaks. So, this is going to be a very close fight. The one thing, that I'll say, they kind of offset each other, right? So Dariush, his last 4 fights have ended in the first or second round. So that doesn't mean that he's not a 3-round fighter. It just means I don't know if he's gonna have the same cardio that Ferreira has. I've seen Ferreira in recent fights go 3 rounds and keep that pace up. But to counter that, Dariush has knockout power and submission game that can finish you early. So this is a close one for me. I'm going to go with Dariush. I think he's a little bit more physical. As Nick said, he out-wrestled him the first time. So if I'm going to have to take a pick, I'm going to go with Dariush. But honestly, it really depends how my lineup works out. And I think they're they're $200 different. So it's basically a pick 'em. But I'll stick with Dariush for my pick.
Yeah, I agree. I think the odds are right here. And if Diego Ferreira goes out there and just smokes Dariush, I'd be surprised, but it wouldn't be the most shocking thing that happened. I mean, he's looked great. It's not as if he lost and has alternated wins and losses since. He's looked fantastic since he lost to Dariush over here. So, we'll see how that goes. Jacob, you were nodding at Dan's assessment of Ferreira. Are you gonna split the group here?
Yeah, so I think this is one that DraftKings and the odd makers and all of you guys surprisingly have nailed. This is a coin flip of a fight. I've watched tape on both these guys, and every time I watch it, if I'm watching Dariush tape, I think he's going to win. If I'm watching Diego's tape, I think he's going to win. I will say that Diego, like you guys are saying, he's 17-2. His loss is to Dariush, and his other loss is to Poirier. The loss to Poirier kind of showed me more than some of his wins because he was eating shots from Poirier. Poirier ended up TKOing him, but I mean, Poirier was boom, boom, and stunned and still moving and still moving and still moving. So he's tough, and I think this is definitely going to be the fight of the night. And kind of what you were alluding to, Angelo, nothing would surprise me in this fight. It would not surprise me if one of these guys comes out and gets a knockout in 10 seconds. It wouldn't surprise me if Dariush just rides his back the whole time. Nothing would surprise me on this fight. I think they nailed it. I think you can't really go wrong with either one of these guys. If I was leaning one way for DraftKings, I would pick Dariush just for the takedowns. But I think that Diego's going to win the fight, but it's not going to be a domination on either side. So I had Diego in this fight, but I stayed away from DraftKings just because it's such a coin flip.
Yeah.
Hey, Jacob, one quick point too, because I do think this has potential to be fight of the night. So I think you got to have one of these guys in your lineup, unless you feel really confident with a few others and the way the dollars play out in your lineup. But with that being said, out of the two, I think Dariush has more of the finishing power. So on a coin flip fight that could potentially be fight of the night, I'm going to go with the guy that has the chance to get the finish.
And Dariush can take a shot too. I think that the last fight he won, I don't know if it was the last fight he won, where he was stunned back against the fence and just started throwing bombs and ended up winning that fight in 10 seconds later. So they both can take a shot. So this could be fireworks. Big fireworks.
He was on skates against Drakkar Close, and then all of a sudden he came back and poured it on the other guy and knocked him out cold. So
yeah, it'll definitely be an entertaining fight. I'm not touching it. I had Ferreira in my lineup and I kept taking him out. So I'm not touching it for now. I may switch later, but it is so close. If this fight was this close and they were 7,000 something, I would touch it. 8,000 something, probably not, but we'll see what happens. But it's a close fight. It's definitely an entertaining fight. So I'm looking forward to it. Next up on the Overeem Volkov fight night card, we have Alexandre Pantoja versus Manel Cape. This is another one. This is another exciting fight that the odds aren't 100% accurate. I mean, these are razor thin, and most people consider this, negative 130 and plus 110. Most people consider this a pick'em fight. I personally think it's much closer to a pick'em. Jacob, you're shaking your head. I have no idea why. Please,
feeling a lock of the week coming up. Well, 2 locks of the week this time.
If that was allowed, if I was allowed 2 lock of the weeks, the second would be on Pantoja. Is it Pantoja?
Yeah.
So he's going to put on a show here, and I mean a show. So this guy, which is actually funny, I look at his Sherdog here, and his last fight was against Askar Askarov, funny enough. So, and he lost that fight, but it was a decision. But this guy lost a war to Figgy, the champ, beat Moreno, who just fought for the belt. And I just think he's watching tape on him. I'm like, I start scrolling through. How does this guy lose five fights? He lost 2 early in his career. He lost to Figgy and he lost his last fight. But this guy looks unbelievable, and he's going to have forward pressure, and he looks fantastic everywhere with kicks. And this other guy's making his UFC debut. I just think he gets overwhelmed early. I did see that this guy fought Uncle Creepy, who's one of my favorite. That's one of the best nicknames ever. Alexandra's nickname is the Cannibal, which is another great nickname. But this guy making his UFC debut, he does have KO power. Don't get that mistaken. Manel has KO power, but I just think Alexandra is just better everywhere. If I could pick a lock of the week again, this would be it. He's going to be in my lineup, and I think he gets it done early. Well,
it's definitely going to be an exciting fight because we have striker versus striker, and I don't think anybody's looking for a takedown. I don't think there's another game plan here. Nick, what are your thoughts on this fight? I'm sure you agree it's striker versus striker. We have the more technical striker in Pantoja versus the more of a brawler in Manel. Which way are you going? You taking striker, technical striker, or brawler in this matchup?
I don't think it's striker versus striker. I think it's a striker versus a jiu-jitsu guy that likes to strike. And when you look at their records, they definitely have some tough fights, but the one thing that stands out is a common opponent in Oka Sasaki. And, Cape lost to him, and Pantoja really worked him over when I saw it. And MMA math doesn't really work like that. It's not always the case, but Pantoja's just so well-rounded, and he's so good. And I think once he gets it to the ground, it's all over, and I think he'll get it to the ground, and I think he'll get it to the ground early. I picked Pantoja. He's in my lineup, and this was like when I was going through the lineup, I had my picks. I picked one person first before him, and then he was my second pick. I was like, no doubt.
Yeah, I mean,
there you go, Angelo. There you go.
When I say striker versus striker, certainly their origins aren't striker versus striker, but lately that's all Pantoja's been doing. He looks fantastic on his feet, and he's turned into a straight up striker. So I think this is going to be striker versus striker. I agree. I think Pantoja wins because he does have more tools in his bag, and I think he will go for those tools if he needs to. But anytime you have somebody as powerful, as fast, and unorthodox, because he is more of a brawler style as Manel, it's a little worrisome. Dan, we talked about this last week when Jacob asked you, is it harder to fight somebody that does karate because of the stance? And you said, well, that's an organized style, so you see it in the gym. Brawlers are the ones that can mess you up because they do things that don't make sense that you don't train for in the gym. Do you think that could be a factor here, or are you going with the, sort of the favorite here?
I don't know. I think striking wise, this is probably pretty close to a coin flip. I think they're both powerful. They could both knock each other out. I'll say Cape is probably the greener of the two, but very, very athletic and probably improving at a very fast rate. I believe he's now in the U.S. now training at AKA. That's only going to get him better quickly. Pantoja trains at ATT. I think he will win this fight. I think his easiest path to victory is getting it to the ground and submitting him. I think there's a clear gap between their skills on the ground. The question will be, though, is A, can Pantoja get him down? And B, does he want to get him down? As you've seen his late, most recent fights, he's fallen in love with striking because he's good at it and he's powerful. But I feel like the easiest path to victory for him, as Newell was saying, is get it to the ground quick. And I think that's where he's got a clear advantage. So I'll take Pantoja, hoping he executes that game plan. I'm probably not going to touch it in my DraftKings lineup though.
So I got a question, because we were talking earlier about UFC debuts and how that should weigh on the odds and stuff. I'm interested to know between, Nick and Dan. Dan was in the UFC, made a UFC debut. Nick made his Bellator debut. Is that a thing when you walk into a fight on the big stage like that? And this guy hasn't fought in a year too. So he hasn't fought in a year, coming in, making his UFC debut. Is that a thing, or is that just something that people just kind of make up?
It's a thing. Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead. Nick, go ahead. I'll jump in.
I say it's a thing, but I mean, you look at Manuel Cape, he was the Risen champion. He fought in Saitama Super Arena. So, I mean, it might be weird because there's going to be no people in the crowd, but I don't see the jitters really getting to him. He's had these huge fights with tens of thousands of people there and fought really good guys. He fought Kyle Horiguchi, who's like one of the best in the world, and he's been there and done that. So I wouldn't look at him as some rookie that's like going from nothing to something. He's already been on the big show.
Yeah, I agree with you, Nick. I mean, in terms of when you're asking for my specific experience, I had a very unique upcoming in the sport. So my pro debut was also my UFC debut. So I was 0-0 fighting at the MGM Grand in front of, 14,000 people. So I definitely had some jitters. I felt it. Luckily I won the fight. I felt good enough to win, but 100% I felt it. So, but yeah, to Nick's point, this guy's fought overseas on big stages in front of thousands of people. So there's always a little bit of UFC jitters, but for a guy at his level and his level of experience, I mean, we'll see if it affects him, but it shouldn't be a major impact considering the experience he's had.
Yeah, I agree with that. We talked about it with the Michael Chandler fight. I thought Michael Chandler would have some UFC type jitters, but that's a different situation because he's one of the best on the planet and it's his UFC debut and there's expectations there where I don't think there's really a spotlight on this fight. I don't think there's that extra pressure. I did put Pantoja in my lineup. Personally, I think it is a close fight. I just think Pantoja has more tools. And I think if Pantoja wins, he will win by stoppage because if the striking's going his way, he can finish it. If the striking's not going this way, I'm hoping he goes into his tool bag, uses his grappling, and then submits Manel. That's why I drafted him. I think he should win. He can win, but it is a toss-up. Manel's a great striker, and he's had some, he's had a solid career so far, and he's had some really good wins. So it can really go either way. The odds are probably correct. I think it's much closer, but the dollar value in DraftKings is wrong. Manel's he's a good pick at 7,900, but I'm still going to go 8,300 for Pantoja. Now we're moving to the co-main event of the evening for the Volkov Overeem Fight Night card. This could headline any other Fight Night card. We have the legend Frankie the Answer Edgar versus Corey Sandhagen. This is, of all the fights we have talked about, if you're watching these videos in order, you have seen us go through fight after fight, and most of them, the odds were wrong. In this case, the odds are ridiculously wrong. These are some of the most lopsided, absurd odds I have seen on this fight card or any other. Tell me if I'm wrong, but Sandhagen, a minus 400 favorite against Frankie Edgar. That means you would have to bet $400 on Corey Sandhagen to win. And if he did win, you'd only get 100. That's nuts. That is nuts to me. And I'm not trying to be dramatic. I genuinely feel like these are crazy odds. Dan, you bet. Do you think these are crazy odds? I mean, am I wrong here?
I mean, if you could read my notes, the first line I have right here is, first off, I think these odds are crazy. So, literally, I think these odds are way off. I mean, Sandhagen at minus 400. I mean, he's young, he's good, he's athletic, he's got a lot of good wins, but Frankie Edgar has literally been in there with everybody. He's 40 years old, but his last fight, first of all, he just dropped down a weight class, so he's finally fighting at 135. His last fight, he went 5 rounds with a top guy in the division and won. So he's in the mix. So yeah, I think the odds are way off. I think this is going to be an interesting stylistic matchup because Sandhagen uses a lot of versatile strikes, footwork. He's in and out. He's kind of moving all over the place, like Dominic Cruz. And against a lot of his opponents, that's worked well for him because they're more walk you down power punchers. And Sandhagen's style does well against somebody who doesn't have a style that can match him with that sort of pace. I would say Frankie Edgar, even at 40 years old, he has that sort of movement. Now, it's not exactly the same, but he has that sort of pace in his movement. He bounces around. He's busy. He's got head movement. I think Frankie Edgar's a great value at $6,800. I don't know if he'll win the fight. I think he can win this fight, certainly at plus 325 or whatever the odds are. I might throw a little money on him just as a value bet. I'm going to definitely put him in my lineup because I think even if he does lose, it'll go to a decision and he'll score a good amount of points. And at $6,800, that opens up a lot of other high-priced fighters in DraftKings. So, yeah, I think the odds are off, and for $6,800 to get Frankie Edgar, that's a steal.
Yeah, and this is definitely, UFC is setting up a changing of the guard type fight here. I'm sure the way they see it is, hey, if Frankie wins, great, he'll headline a fight night coming up. And if he loses, also great because we can still use him. And now Corey, has built a name off himself. The odds are.
One thing I'll say is I hope Edgar mixes in his wrestling a little bit more. I mean, I watched some tape on Sandhagen and like I was saying earlier, he does really well when he controls the distance and he can keep guys frustrated. They don't know what's coming. He throws strikes from all over the place. But man, Aljamain Sterling went out there and cornered him right off the bat, pinned him against the cage, took his back, pressured him, and just finished him in a minute. Not that that'll happen again with Frankie, but I think the key is Frankie's got to pressure him, stay in his face, mix in the wrestling, I think is another big key. But don't let Sandhagen fall into that groove where he can kind of dance around all over and throw punches and kicks from all over the place. So we'll see how it goes. But, yeah, I'm pulling for Frankie on this one.
You're picking Sandhagen, but you want Frankie to win.
No, at the odds, I'm picking Frankie. If it was a coin flip fight, I guess I would take Sandhagen, probably just because I'm reading too much and looking at these odds, but I think it's a coin flip fight. So for the odds and the value, Frankie all day. And I'm rooting for Frankie. So
yeah, I mean, I think I mentioned it 10 times. These odds are nuts. That is just not reflective of the actual fight. That was solid technical analysis here. I think if you've ever watched Frankie Edgar fight, he was Dominic Cruz before Dominic Cruz. His feet never stop moving, ever. He's constantly in and out. He's constantly left and right. That dude has a chin like you've never seen before. Go back in time and watch his fights versus Gray Maynard. I've never seen, and you'll never see somebody almost die and then come back and win the way that he did twice. He's an absolute legend. Jersey tough is a real thing, and Frankie Edgar is one of those guys. Nick, obviously Frankie's aging, and he's a very high volume, high activity fighter. Do you think that's a factor here? Do you think he's slowing down? What do you think happens in this?
I mean, he's definitely getting older, and he might be slowing down, right? But he was moving a lot. He was throwing a lot of arm punches his last fight, not really committing when he fought a power striker in Pedro Munoz, but he did what he had to do to get the job done. And the thing about Sandhagen is he has a lot of really good wins, and he's beaten some good people that I think might give Frankie some trouble, but he's never fought like a real wrestler that tried to take him down, except for Aljamain Sterling, who made it look extremely easy. Now, Frankie's submission game is not as good as Aljamain's. I'd say he's more of a wrestler striker, and Aljamain can obviously strike, but is more of a jiu-jitsu wrestler type fighter. And think that this plays out a lot like the Yair Ray Rodriguez fight, where everyone thought Frankie was going to get smashed, and he kind of danced around a little bit and then times a takedown and gets on top and is pretty relentless. And I think he will score a lot of points, and I think he's a great value, and I do think he will win, and I put him in my lineup.
Yeah, I agree. He's in my lineup as well. I think he wins. Like genuinely think he wins, not regardless of the odds. I think he wins this fight. But then once you factor in the odds and you factor in the DraftKings dollar amount, I think it's a no-brainer. Jacob, you're from Indiana, so you don't understand what Jersey Tough means. You guys push over cows when they're asleep, and yay, look at us. What do you think happens in this fight? You think Frankie Edgar still has it? You think he's fading? What do you think happens here?
So my favorite line that you said about Frankie Edgar, which I like Frank. I don't think there's anyone that dislikes Frankie Edgar. Everyone loves Frankie Edgar, and he is tough. But my favorite line that you said, Angelo, was, if you go back in time and watch, I think that's exactly what Frankie would have to do to win this fight, is go back in time, because I think Corey's just better everywhere. Obviously not the wrestling, but and the Sterling thing is a concern. But at 5'11" versus 5'6", knowing that Frankie's only chance really is to wrestle, I think he keeps him at distance. I think he picks him apart. He's in my lineup. 325 odds. You keep saying that. I think those are right odds. With that being said, at $6,800 for someone as tough as Frankie is, and the way he can get takedowns, I think that's incredible value. So I have Corey because I don't think he lets Frankie wrestle. So I have him in my lineup. I have him to win the fight, but at 6,800 for Frankie, that's incredible value. I think Dan mentioned it as well, but that's just incredible value. I don't think it turns out that way, but I think you can't go wrong if you're going to take Frankie at $6,800.
Yeah, we'll see what happens. I'm looking forward to it. I just love watching Frankie Edgar fight. And maybe this is my problem. I'm too Northeast for my own good. But I think three out of four of us think, Frankie's going to win or should win or is closer to winning than losing. So we'll see what happens. He's in my lineup, and I think he should be in yours. The main event of the evening, Alistair Overeem versus Alexander Volkov for Fight Night. This is an interesting fight. Every time Alistair Overeem goes out there, he has the ability to absolutely separate your head from your body. Will he do it? We don't know. He shows up some days, he doesn't others. This will be an interesting fight. I think these odds are pretty accurate. I think Alexander Volkov should be the favorite, but literally nothing surprises me when Alistair Overeem steps in that cage and goes to work. One thing I will note for anybody watching that is a DraftKings person, I'm very vocal about you always need somebody in the main event, as I think all of us are. Anytime you have 5 rounds to score points instead of 3, that's a big deal. Heavyweights are tricky because if it goes 5 rounds, basically no points have been scored, or somebody's getting stopped. And when you have a fight like this, either one of them can get stopped. This is not a completely lopsided fight where it's going to go one way. It's very clear so-and-so is going to win. So, Nick, what are your thoughts on this fight? Do you think there's a stoppage? And if so, who do you think is doing the stop?
I do not think there's a stoppage. I think if there is a stoppage, it would be Volkov catching Overeem. But this was a fight right away. I put, boom, Overeem, no doubt. He's the underdog, but I think that he should be the favorite. And the difference maker in here is the wrestling. People don't look at Overeem as a wrestler, but he has beautiful trips from the clinch. And he's got nice takedowns. Even as weird as his takedowns are, they work. And he's taken down pretty much everyone he's fought recently since he lost to Curtis Blades. And if you look through Volkov's record, Curtis Blades, wrestler, lost. Overeem lost to him too. Derek Lewis, he was kind of beating his ass and got knocked out. Fabricio Verdum, he was getting beat up and then he came back and won. So that's pretty impressive. But then you look at other losses, like he got out wrestled. It was a long time ago, 5 years ago, but by Czech Congo. and Tony Johnson Jr., who's no one's ever heard of, but is actually a pretty tough.
I know Tony. Tony Johnson's fantastic.
Yeah, he's a great fighter. I know who he is, but like he's not like a household name.
Oh,
He trained down here for a while.
Yeah, he's a great fighter, and he beat Volkov. So Volkov's Achilles heel seems to be wrestlers, and you go through his record, and he's fighting all these strikers and beating them, and no real wrestlers. You look at Timothy Johnson, who's a wrestler but really a striker, and that was a split decision. I think that Overeem wins this fight, and I think he cruises to a decision. Volkov is so long, it's kind of hard to get off on that ground and pound and finish him, especially when he locks his guard up. So I see Overeem hitting the body a lot with the ground and pound. Nothing significant enough to stop the fight, but getting a lot of takedowns and winning this fight.
yeah. Well, now that was solid, and now I'm looking at my lineup, and Volkov is in it, and now I'm worried about that. Dan, is he in yours?
This is probably the first 5-round main event that I don't have one, or actually in a lot of cases, both fighters. I don't think I'm touching either of these guys. I think there's too many unknowns. My opinion is that Volkov should win. He's a really good striker. He's 6'11". That's very tough to deal with. He's younger. I think he's going to be in better shape, push a faster pace than Overeem. And I think overall he should pick him apart. But like you said, heavyweights are tough in DraftKings. So if it goes 5 rounds, it may be a low volume fight, and you may not get that many points even throughout 5 rounds. And Overeem, to be honest, he's been looking great lately. He's got, a big win over Augusto Sakai. He's now training at elevation, so his cardio has been looking really good. He won his last fight in the 5th round. But he's been in trouble in a lot of those fights too that he's pulled off. So I just don't like the dollar value on either of these guys, because I could see it go. I could see Overeem pulling something off. I mean, Nick, I agree with you 100%. Overeem's path to victory here is wrestling. Whether or not he can execute that and has the wrestling to do it, I don't know. I don't think he does. Unless he's really, really training wrestling all day, every day. I mean, Volkov got taken down a lot by Curtis Blades, but Curtis Blades will shoot 100 takedowns throughout a 5-round fight. Alistair's wrestling, I mean, is not on the level of Curtis Blades. It's trips, it's tricky things. I mean, the last fight, I think the takedown he got to win it, I think Cormier was laughing at it. I was like, oh, that's not even really a takedown, but hey, it's work. So I don't think that level of wrestling will work against Volkov. So I'm going to take Volkov, but I'm not putting him in my lineup.
Yeah, no, you are right. I'll never forget that. Daniel Cormier was literally laughing, doing the commentary, saying, I don't know what I just watched, but it worked. I think he pulled him.
But did it work?
Himself.
But did it work?
Right, that's all that matters. I'm with it. I just don't think it will work against Volkov. I hope for Volkov's sake it doesn't. But
so, Jacob, you're also a giant physical specimen of a man like these two are. Who do you think wins this fight?
So the only time I think I would take Overeem at this stage in his career, unfortunately, is if he had just overwhelming more experience than the other guy. And in this fight, they have basically the same amount of experience. The wrestling thing is concerning, but I love what Dan said, that he was taken down by Curtis Blades and he was held down by Curtis Blades. And Curtis Blades does that to everyone. So, yeah, Overeem might be able to get him to the ground, but I just don't know if he can keep him on the ground. And I think Alexander is a much better striker. You touched on the Derek Lewis fight. Nick mentioned it. He was destroying Derek Lewis in that fight and then just got caught at the end. And then he lost the Curtis Blades fight, like we said. And other than that, he hadn't lost in 5 years. So, I think he's overall a better fighter. If Overeem had the experience advantage on him, I would pick Overeem. But I just think he's a better fighter, and I don't think he gets held to the ground like he did against Curtis Blades. So he is in my lineup. I'm doing the main event. I'm very confident in him. So that's my pick is Volkov.
Sure. So it's going to be 3 against 1, Nick. So Nick's going Overeem. The rest of us are going Volkov. Personally, I think Volkov is a younger Overeem without all the power. I think his striking is great. He has nice, crisp striking, obviously. He uses his range really well. He's super tall, and we've seen a lot of fighters that are tall and have range and don't really use it, but Volkov uses it well. I think the division needs it. I think it's important for the division for Alexander Volkov to win this fight. If Alistair Overeem continues to beat these up-and-coming contenders and, these almost a title shot fighters and then loses next fight, he's going to keep screwing up the division, and that's what he's doing. Alistair Overeem just keeps beating people that are this close to getting a title shot. So I love Alistair Overeem. I hated his guts when he beat my all-time favorite fighter, Vitor Belfort. But I love Alistair Overeem. I love watching him. I love watching what steroids did to his body. I've never seen a larger human being my entire life. Go back to Alistair Overeem in 2003, 100 pounds lighter. A ton of fun to watch. He's an absolute legend. I just don't think he's going to pull it off. If he does, he wins by, I think he's the one who will win by knockout. I agree, Dan and Nick, that he has the wrestling and that's what he should do to win. But I do think if he wins, it's not the wrestling, because I think the wrestling will just exhaust him and he'll end up getting caught. So I do think if he wins, it will be by knockout because he still does have that power. He's the only person ever to hold a belt in the UFC Pride and Glory, kickboxing, if you don't watch Glory. So he had 3 belts at the same time. He was the greatest.
He never had a UFC belt. He fought for the belt.
Didn't he beat Brock Lesnar for the belt?
No. You're wrong.
That was a number 1 contender fight? I do.
No, it was just an intro fight. And then
all right, interim champion.
But he fought Stipe. No, it wasn't an interim fight. It was just an intro fight. It was his UFC debut.
I'm wrong. For some reason, I thought he did hold
Strikeforce.
Let's see if Angelo edits this out later on.
Strikeforce. Yeah, this will be edited out. But he held multiple belts in giant organizations and literally was the greatest striker on planet Earth for like a 3-year period. And he still has those skills. So I think if he wins, it is by stoppage because of his striking. But I do think he loses because if he comes in with a wrestling first game plan, he will get exhausted and stopped. And if he doesn't come in with a wrestling first game plan, I think he'll get outstruck by the younger, at this point in his career, better striker, more accurate striker than Alexander Volkov. Great night of fights.
You guys are bugging. Overeem's going to win. That's my lock of the week. That's my lock of the week. Overeem.
Yeah.
Be careful.
Well, we'll do our recap show and I'll play some Curb Your Enthusiasm music when Nick gets introduced next week. So great night of fights. Check back with us on Saturday morning. This card is plagued with COVID drops and injury drops, and this card is getting shuffled around like crazy. So stay tuned right now for our DraftKings lineups, our final lineups, and check back Saturday to make sure there weren't any drops, because if there were, we'll have updated lineups for you and updated picks.